It had been growing since his daughters were small.
Well, it came about when my daughters were very young, and Saturday was always Daddy's Day with the two daughters. So we'd start out and try to go someplace.
And then we go to Griffith Park, and there was a beautiful carousel there. It's still there. Wonderful, beautiful thing.
As I'd sit there while they rode the merry-go-round, did all these things, sit on a bench, eating peanuts, I felt that there should be something built, some kind of an amusement enterprise built where that the parents and the children could have fun together.
He first was going to have a little ride where across Riverside Drive you'd get on his 1.5 scale steamer and would go under Riverside Drive up to where the sound stages were, and you'd sit on these little cars and go from one picture to another to see how Hollywood worked.
At the time that Walt was thinking about building a park, most amusement parks were not someplace that you'd want to let your kids go on their own. You pretty much, they were kind of dirty, they were kind of seedy. There was a park in Copenhagen called Tivoli, and it struck Walt by being very, very clean, well-run, festive, little popcorn lights on all the buildings everywhere. A lot of the things that sort of came back into Disneyland, I think, also came from Tivoli.
And when we went through the Tivoli Gardens, he was making notes all the time. And I said, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm just making notes about something that I've always dreamed about, and that is someday having a great, great center of playgrounds for the children and the families of America."
Roy thought the company's stockholders wouldn't think it made sense for a film company to go into the amusement park business.
Sandbox. He said it was his sandbox. He says, "This is where I come to have fun." And we had nothing but fun with Walt. I mean, he was a riot.
And when we'd be working on something, he could hardly stand it. If I'd be soldering something, he would almost want to solder it himself,
Well, at the beginning, it was also money. In fact, he hawked his life insurance and a few other things to get the money to continue to do the things he wanted to do to get the Disneyland project started.
But where would the new park go?
We had 10 sites that we'd looked at. The first site was Harbor at the 5, at the Santa Ana Freeway. And he went for the first site. And all he did was he moved it down a quarter of a section to get it away from the freeway.
While Walt was able to get the park started with his own money, he couldn't afford to actually build it. He saw the solution in television. Roy was finally convinced that Disneyland was a viable venture. He prepared to travel to New York to submit the idea to potential financiers. He needed something to show them. So Walt turned to his friend Herb Ryman, an artist who had worked for the studio in the 1940s. Roy completed a deal with ABC, which granted the television network a 35% stake in Disneyland in return for an investment of $500,000. In the beginning of 1954, ABC President Robert Kintner and Walt went on the air to announce their partnership, the development of a weekly show called Disneyland.
This new medium, and, well, I just want to assure you that we're not taking it lightly, that it's not going to be just a little stepchild of the Disney organization. It's going to be one of our major enterprises.
Walt definitely did not want to host a TV series. They had a lot of studies that went on looking at other people. Finally, as each study went back and showed that it was Walt had the greatest amount of enthusiasm.
Now we want you to share with us our latest and greatest dream. That's it, right here. Disneyland.
And you think, what is it that makes this man special? I mean, he's just an ordinary man. And then suddenly he come out with the most brilliant suggestion, and you think, why hadn't I thought of that?
even in the two-dimensional world that we designed for the motion pictures, there's the implication of space. In fact, we used many of the techniques we had learned in the films and applied it to actual third dimension. And when we set up a kind of story in our own mind about what it was, we would establish an imaginary long shot as if we were taking it with motion pictures.
One of the lands in the park is True Life Adventureland, was its original name, based on the True Life Adventure films that Walt was creating. And the Jungle Cruise was the big attraction, where you would actually see real animals. Well, the big problem is that they tend to sleep all day, so that during the day no one would see them. They would only come out at night when it had cooled off. So it was very quick that they realized that they needed to make artificial animals. And that would be the way that you could have hippos in front of you all the time and a gorilla in front of you all the time. I've always believed that the reason Walt built Disneyland was because he wanted one. He wanted the biggest train layout. He wanted a place for all his toys. Walt would go to the park early in the morning before the park opened, and he'd get in the fire truck and drive the fire truck around Disneyland. And people would think he was crazy, but what he was doing was playing with his toy.
I can remember him saying that, you know, Dick, this picture business is tough because when you finish a movie and you put it in the can, it's finished. But Disneyland will never be finished. We can always make it better.